If I'm trying to hit the ball a little bit higher, right, watch how my shoulders change by looking up towards the ceiling. Right, I'll look up a little bit higher, right? So a lot of the stuff that we get out of our body behavior relative to complementing the kind of golf shot we want to hit can simply come through a visual intent.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Kerrod Gray here in the studio today at the Pronghorn Resort in Bend, Oregon with my good friend Jeff Ritter. Jeff, pleasure to have you here, mate.
Great to be with you, bud.
We're going to be sharing some simple strategies to improve your ball flight and also your routines. This information right here is really going to elevate your golf game. Jeff is the #1 golf coach ranked in Oregon, so everything that we're going to share today is going to be crucial to help you guys improve your golf. Stay tuned. This stuff's really going to help.
That sounds all right. You know, for a guy that looks like he kind of knows what he's doing a little bit.
Once in a while.
So tell me something. When you look at your ball flight,
Okay.
do you feel like you hit the ball a little bit too high or a little bit too low relative to your ideal?
So I would say throughout my whole career, from when I was an amateur going into professional, the technique has improved dramatically. However, I have always erred on the side of a ball flight which is too high. Now, through time and place and working on the game a lot, I can allow for that. And my identity as a golfer is I know that through these certain shots, my ball flight is a little bit high. So I can account for that when I'm playing. But we do see a lot of amateur golfers have a tremendous amount of height on those shots.
They do.
Right? So they're adding loft. So we've got an 8-iron here and they're getting this lead wrist cupping. They're adding so much loft. Sometimes that 8-iron turns into a pitching wedge, right?
Yeah.
So from your perspective there, let's say I wanted to lower my ball flight. Let's make this generalized for the population. What are some simple strategies that we could use to do that?
Sure. Well, you know, there's a number of ways that we can hit it too high. There's a number of ways we can hit it too low. But like as you alluded to, the average person that comes in, they're hitting it way too high. And a lot of that just comes from their interpretation of how to play the game. You know, you got the ball on the ground, we want it up in the air.
Yeah.
Right. People aren't recognizing that the golf club itself is designed to launch the ball in a certain way if we swing it correctly.
Correct.
But because we got this problem, ball down here, we want it up there, very often people are trying to help the ball get up in the air. And the first thing is realize you don't have to do that at all, right? You got loft on every single club you got. That loft is there for a reason. So once we can kind of get this club just swinging across the turf with a very shallow angle of attack, now it kind of comes down to, am I delivering the correct amount of loft based on the design of the golf club to begin with? So when you look at golf club design, then they all lean forward just a little bit, right? And that's the way that the nice folks at whatever club company is in your golf bag, you know, want that club to be delivered with a slight forward lean. Now, when we look at players on TV versus recreational players versus old players or extremely young players, speed, you know, influences how much of that shaft lean that we would like to see. So first off, we're not trying to get everybody to get a ton of forward shaft lean because it's not appropriate for every player. But I will say that everyone who's any good at this is going to have the head and handle relatively neutral to forward leaning. You're not going to see them leaning back just like that.
Yeah.
So I like to do two basic things. The first thing is just start off with our intent. Our intention based on the possibilities that exist in launching this golf ball off the club face. And there's really three possibilities: low, medium, and high, right?
Yep.
In fact, anything you're looking at with your golf game, there's three possibilities: swing path right, straight, or left, club face open, square, or closed.
Yeah.
So a lot of times in golf, we can overcomplicate this stuff. Everything works in levels of 3.
Sure.
But if I'm trying to hit the ball a little bit lower, the first thing that I might do is just get my eyes to look a little bit lower.
All right.
If I'm trying to hit the ball a little bit higher, right, watch how my shoulders change by looking up towards the ceiling. Right, I'll look a little bit higher, right? So a lot of the stuff that we get out of our body behavior relative to complementing the kind of golf shot we want to hit can simply come through a visual intent. And far too many golfers are just walking up to the golf ball, looking out to the hitting area without seeing a specific height.
Yeah.
And if the ball is flying too high, well, let's go ahead and look a little bit lower with our eyes and create an intention as if we're trying to hit the ball underneath something as opposed to over top of something.
Yeah, yeah. So,
relative to keeping this as simple as possible, relative to trying to make sure we have that forward leaning of the shaft where the glove hand is kind of over the inside of the lead shoe, I like to have people remember the story of Seve Ballesteros. A lot of people don't know that story, so I tell them that story, right? But Seve Ballesteros, he grew up on the beaches of Spain with one frickin' club. It was a 3-iron. And he had to learn how to alter the functionality of that club to hit every possible shot you would need in a round of golf. So 3-iron flop shot, he had to figure out how to like make this thing all super lofty, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, he didn't have to worry about hitting it as far as a 3-iron, but if you wanted to hit it farther than a 3-iron, you'd have to change something about the loft or strike with that as well. So I like to tell people, like, imagine that you're out in the golf course. So let's say you're hitting an 8-iron. That's the club you have in your hand. That's the number stamped on the bottom. You're hitting your 8-iron, but it's flying like a 9-iron or even worse, like a pitching wedge. So basically, you are increasing the loft by 2 clubs, right? Well, let's say you have an 8-iron shot, but you look in your golf bag and you don't have your 8-iron because you left it at home because as you're watching golf on TV, swinging in your socks, you left your 8-iron next to your couch.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I don't have a 7-iron either.
We hear this all the time.
And you know what? Gosh, I also forgot that freaking 9-iron, right? So all you got in your hand is a wedge. So how do you get your wedge to behave like an 8-iron? Well, you'd have to go 2 clubs up, right? So if Seve Ballesteros was in this situation, he's like, gosh, I got to hit it 8-iron distance. I don't have an 8-iron. All I have is this super lofty club. What would it feel like to deliver 2 clubs less loft? Well, you'd have to have your weight pushing substantially onto your lead foot. You'd have to have a lot of lateral shifting out of your hips. You'd also have to have a lot of forward handle location and or lean of the shaft. So if I can get someone just to look a little bit lower, and then imagine that they got to take this lofted club and make it perform like a less lofted club, well, all of a sudden, they're more keyed to the functionality, right, of the movement relative to the desired outcome. And too many golfers are out there going, hey, I've got a club and a ball and a target, and I guess this one's supposed to go that far, right? There's no intent behind their technique. So when they come in and I explain that they're delivering 2 clubs too much loft, right? And their visual intent isn't helping them, or their concept of the game isn't helping them, well, we help them understand the equipment's there to help them. We get them to imagine a lower trajectory shot, like I'm hitting under something versus over something. And then we say, well, imagine you had to take the club you got and make it play 2 clubs stronger. The same way Seve might do intuitively, growing up as a kid in Spain. Then all of a sudden you understand how to influence the club head A, right, to communicate with the ball B in a way that makes a lot more sense to the player than just giving them some technical cue of get your hands more forward.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that through skill development exercises, even back in the day of going back 15 meters away from a tree and trying to hit it underneath the tree until you can do it. Through having an objective outcome such as that, your technique will tend to start to mold in a way which would produce the desired outcome. You see all these players come out of British golf courses in Australia, they tend to have a very low ball flight at times relative to having to control their ball in the wind. And they had to do that intuitively from trying to control their flight. They weren't all on the range trying to figure out or put the club in such a position which was going to narrow it. From a young age, they would have played, and they come out and they produce this low flying, penetrating ball flight as an act through skill development because they were forced to.
They're forced to do it. I mean, like old school coaching versus new school coaching. It's all good coaching if the outcome is what you're looking for, right? And back in the day, like someone like a Harvey Penick, Little Red Book, little tips and nuggets of wisdom from a lifetime of coaching. Nothing to do with all the technology-based business. And when he would meet with one of his tour players, probably Ben Crenshaw or Tom Kite, if they were struggling with ball flight, as a youngster growing up, he would just like put them behind a tree. Like there wouldn't be like an hour-long lesson. He would show up, right? He'd be like, all right, you're hooking it too much. I want you to stand behind this tree and slice them around the tree. And I'm going to go back and, tend to the shop, and I'll check on you in an hour and see how you're doing. So basically you create a task, and then in order to complete the task, well, you have to be able to create the right kind of communication between the club and the ball, right? So the thing about golf that's cool but also challenging is it's not just one swing. It's a big game. You got a power game, a finesse game, you got a putting game, you got a mental game. But all of those games need different attitudes and actions to make sure that the strike or the contact or the outcome is in tune with that game that you're playing. And just a little sidebar right here, like I have people come in all the time that have the shaft a little bit too neutral. They're adding a little bit too much loft. Maybe they're not seeing that lead wrist nice and flat, or the lead elbow nice and long, or lengthened with the arm from the shoulder down to the glove hand. And they're so upset that they can't get that flipping or adding of loft out of their game. But the thing is that, like, if you're trying to hit a flop shot or a bunker shot,
it's great,
right? It's great, right? To see that lead wrist fold up, to see the elbows separate a little bit, to see the head and the handle more neutral. So it's really all about, in my coaching, not trying to eliminate stuff, but add stuff. Build the repertoire of shot making, build the performance IQ of understanding. And instead of looking at something you see in your full swing and saying, that's crap, I hate it, you can look at that and go, well, that's actually really useful somewhere else, right? But to hit a power shot with a lower trajectory, more penetrating ball flight, then I'm gonna have to learn how to move a little bit differently to create an action that communicates with the ball in tune with what a power shot should look like, as opposed to a soft, floaty, short game shot or finesse shot.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, so let's put this all together. I'm going to set up to this for a player who hits it a little bit too high than what I'd like. We're going to use those cues that you gave me, Jeff. I'm going to place a little bit more pressure forward. I'm actually just going to feel what it would be like and imagine hitting it a lot lower. I'm going to go about 10 meters lower than I would normally hit this golf club.
Picture a big old tree, right? You can go over it, around it, or under it. In this case, we have a task where I'm asking you to go under it. So you're going to get your visual intent lower with your eyes, right? You might put a little bit more pressure on your lead foot. You can even, lean the shaft forward a couple of degrees more than you normally would, right? But then it's all about 2 club up. So if Kerrod is currently delivering a club, what club you got right here?
8 iron.
8 iron, right? Perfect for our little conversation. So if his 8 iron is performing like a pitching wedge, right? Then we need to imagine that this 8 iron now is going to turn into a 6 iron for him, right? Just to get the true 8 iron loft, right?
Okay.
So 2 club up. It's all about getting neutral, not creating too much shaft lean or anything like that.
Okay, perfect. Off we go. Feel a little bit lower. Shift my focus. Off we go.
Little low heater every time.
That felt great.
Yeah. Simple adjustments.